to Deep Sleep Stories. Thank you to everyone who's been listening. If these stories help you relax or fall asleep, a short review, comment, or sharing the podcast with someone who might benefit is a simple and meaningful way to support the show so that we may continue to offer it for free. Now, take a slow, gentle breath and let's begin tonight's story.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, a quiet place where your day can loosen its grip and you can drift toward rest. Tonight you'll follow the gentle hush of rain along a woodland path, listening to the soft tap of rain boots as they wander through moss, puddles, and mist. Settle in the way you like best. Let your shoulders drop as if they've been holding a bundle you no longer need to carry. Unclench your jaw. Smooth your forehead. If your eyes are open, allow them to become heavy. And if they're already closed, let them stay that way. As if closing them is the simplest, kindest choice you can make. Take a slow breath in, as though you're sipping warm air through a straw, unhurried and easy. Hold it for the briefest moment, not as an effort, only as a pause. Then breathe out gently, like a candle flame you don't want to disturb. Again, breathe in and out, noticing how the bed supports you, how the pillow holds the shape of your head, how gravity itself is a friendly hand, guiding you down into comfort. Imagine for a moment the scent of rain, that clean, soft smell that rises from the ground when water meets earth. Imagine it without trying too hard. Let it arrive on its own, the way a lullaby arrives from another room. In this space, nothing needs solving. Thoughts can pass like clouds over a sleeping hill. If your mind wanders, that's perfectly fine. It can wander and still return gently to the sound of steady rain. Somewhere nearby in the distance of your imagination, there is a forest. Not a dark or threatening one, but a welcoming woodland, old and kind, with trees that stand as patient as breath. There is a path there, and it is waiting, and the rain is light, more like a whisper than a storm. Soon, you'll be there. Soon, you won't need to do anything at all. And now, as if a curtain of quiet is being drawn, the story begins to tell itself. In a small valley where mist loved to gather, there was a woodland that held many gentle secrets. The trees grew tall and close, their branches weaving together like slow-moving hands. Leaves collected rain and released it in soft drips, one by one, into the dark, rich soil below. Ferns unfurled at the edges of the path, and moss spread across stones like a green velvet blanket. On the morning this tale truly begins, the rain had already been falling for a while. It was the kind of rain that didn't demand attention. It didn't rattle the windows or lash the rooftops. It simply arrived and stayed. Steady and tender, as if the sky had decided the world needed a long sip of water. A traveler came to the woodland path, not with urgency, but with a calm curiosity. The traveler was not running from anything, nor hurrying toward a particular destination. In fact, the traveler's plans were simple: to walk, to listen, and to let the rain do what rain does best. soften the edges of the day. The traveler wore a coat the color of wet bark and a pair of rain boots that shone faintly as if they'd been polished by 100 puddles. They were sturdy boots, the kind that didn't mind mud, the kind that made a comforting sound when they stepped into shallow water. Tap, splash, tap. A small rhythm, easy as a lullaby. At the start of the path, there stood an arch of branches grown naturally over time, not shaped by anyone's hands. It was dotted with tiny droplets, each one holding a miniature world. The traveler paused beneath it and for a moment looked up through the canopy. The forest breathed, not in the way people breathe, but in a slower, deeper way. The trees took in the damp air and released it again, scented with pine and leaf and earth. The traveler breathed too, matching that pace without thinking. In, out. A quiet agreement between a wandering soul and an ancient place. Then the traveler stepped forward, and the path welcomed them. It was not a wide path. It didn't belong to carts or crowds. It belonged to those who had time enough to notice the color of lichen on a fallen branch, the bead of water on a spider's thread, the little curve of a mushroom cap peeking from beneath a leaf. The path was soft, worn by footsteps and rain and seasons, and it wound gently between trunks that rose like pillars. The rain made everything glisten. Every leaf held a shine. Every stone looked freshly rinsed. The traveler's boots pressed into the damp ground and lifted again, leaving a print that filled slowly with water, then blurred, then disappeared, as if the forest preferred not to keep too much record of passing. Tap, splash, tap. With each step, the traveler's thoughts began to settle, not because they were forced away, but because the forest didn't ask for them. In the woods, there was no need to replay conversations or plan tomorrow. The trees had stood through countless tomorrows. The rain had fallen through countless worries. The traveler could let those things rest for a while. A little farther in, the path curved beside a stream. The stream was narrow and lively, its surface rippling under the rain. It sang a quiet, constant song, one that didn't have words, only tones. Water slipping over stones, water turning around roots, water carrying tiny leaves like small boats. The traveler stopped near the stream and watched a cluster of raindrops gather on a fern frond. The fern trembled slightly, then let the drops fall all at once into the stream below. The stream accepted them without complaint, without a splash loud enough to startle. It simply folded them in. In the distance, deeper in the woodland, there was a sound like a bell made of wood and wind. Not sharp, not bright, more like a hollow, gentle note. The traveler tilted their head, listening. It happened again, a soft knock, then silence, then another. It was a sound that seemed to say, "Come along when you're ready. No hurry." So the traveler continued. The rain boots made their steady music as the path changed beneath them. Here the ground was packed with pine needles, springy and soft. There it was dotted with puddles that reflected the pale sky above. In one puddle, the traveler saw the shadow of branches swaying. In another, a small leaf floated, spinning slowly in place, as if dancing to the rain's rhythm. Tap, splash, tap. As the traveler walked, the forest began to show its quieter details, the ones that revealed themselves only to those who moved gently. A snail with a shell like a tiny polished stone traced a slow line along a wet log. A robin shook rain from its feathers, then hopped to a higher branch, unimpressed by the weather. Somewhere unseen, a frog made a sound like a sleepy chuckle. Every so often, the traveler would reach out and brush a hand along a leaf, feeling the cool water slide onto their fingertips. It was a simple sensation, pleasant and grounding. Coolness, smoothness, the faint resistance of a leaf's surface. Then the water would slip away, returning to the cycle it belonged to. The path narrowed again, becoming more like a suggestion than a road. A few stones, half buried, formed a kind of stepping trail through a particularly muddy stretch. The traveler stepped from stone to stone, boots landing carefully. Each stone was slick, and each step required a small, mindful balance. But there was no strain in it. It was the good kind of attention, soft, present, unforced. A small reminder that the body knows how to move, how to adjust, how to carry itself. When the traveler reached the end of the stones, they found a patch of moss so thick it looked like a cushion laid out for resting. A fallen tree formed a low bench beside it, and the traveler sat down, letting their boots settle into the damp grass. They listened. Rain on leaves, stream song, the occasional creak of a branch, the hush of wind moving through the canopy like a slow hand combing hair. In that listening, something else became noticeable, a faint warmth, oddly out of place in the rainy cool. The traveler turned their head slightly, and there, just beyond a veil of ferns, was a lantern. It wasn't a modern lantern with harsh light. It was small, old-fashioned, and its glow was soft and golden, like honey. It hung from a branch that arched low, as if the tree had decided to offer it. Beneath the lantern, a narrow side path opened up, barely visible, bordered by stones that were arranged with gentle care. The traveler didn't feel startled. The forest had been inviting, and this felt like another invitation. The traveler stood, rain boots squelching softly, and stepped toward the lantern's glow. The side path was even quieter than the main one, as if it led into a part of the woodland that preferred whispers. The lantern's light didn't fight the mist. It simply existed within it, a warm pocket of brightness. As the traveler walked, they noticed that the stones along the path were not random. Each one had a smooth top, as if worn by hands or time. Some were speckled, some dark, some pale, and each carried beads of rain like tiny jewels. The traveler's boots landed carefully between them, respectful of the boundary they created. Tap, soft splash, tap. The path led into a small clearing where the rain fell in finer threads. Here the canopy was thicker and the leaves above overlapped like shingles. The ground was covered in moss, and in the center of the clearing was a shallow pool perfectly round, as if a raindrop had fallen long ago and decided to stay. The pool's surface quivered with each drop, creating ripples that expanded and overlapped, weaving patterns that were almost hypnotic. The traveler stood at the edge and watched. In the pool, reflections shifted. A branch, a leaf, a patch of pale sky. Then for just a moment, something else, like a soft light, moving beneath the water, slow as drifting smoke. The traveler leaned slightly closer, not out of alarm, but out of quiet wonder. The light beneath the surface rose, and as it rose, the water didn't part or splash. It simply brightened, as if the pool had remembered it could glow. The light gathered into a shape no larger than a teacup, then stretched into something like a small figure made of mist and moonlight, with a face that was more suggestion than detail. The figure floated just above the pool, and though it had no wings, it moved with the ease of a seed on air. It regarded the traveler for a moment, then drifted toward the path as if to lead the way. The traveler did not speak. There was no need. Some moments are meant to be held in silence, like warm stones in a pocket. The traveler simply followed. The lantern's glow appeared again ahead, and now there were more of them, tiny lights. Not all lanterns, some like fireflies, some like faint stars, caught low among the leaves. They hovered near the path, forming a soft trail through the rain-dim woodland. The traveler's boots continued their gentle rhythm, and that rhythm seemed to fit perfectly with the floating lights, with the hush, with the rain's patient falling. Tap, splash, tap. Deeper and deeper into the forest, the air grew cooler and the mist thickened. The traveler could feel droplets clinging to their coat, could smell the sharp freshness of wet pine. The path curved, dipped, and rose again, always unhurried. At last the trees began to thin, and the traveler came upon a place where the ground sloped downward into a small hollow. In the hollow stood a cottage. It was the kind of cottage that seemed to belong to the woodland, not to any village or road. Its walls were made of smooth, dark wood, and its roof was covered in moss and tiny plants, as if it wore a living hat. Smoke curled from a stone chimney in a slow, sleepy ribbon, and the windows glowed warmly, fogged slightly from the inside. A little porch wrapped around the front, and hanging from the porch beams were chimes, delicate pieces of wood and shell that tapped together when the wind nudged them. That must have been the bell-like sound from earlier, the traveler realized. It wasn't a warning. It was a welcome. The traveler walked up the path to the cottage, boots sinking softly into wet earth. On the porch there was a mat made of woven reeds, placed there with simple intention. The traveler stepped onto it and, without thinking, paused. As if responding to that pause, the cottage door opened by itself. Not abruptly, not dramatically, but slowly, as if it had been expecting company. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of herbs and wood smoke. The light was golden, coming from candles tucked into safe corners and a small fire crackling low in a stone hearth. A kettle sat near the coals, releasing a faint stream of steam. The traveler stepped in, and the door closed softly behind them. No one else was visible, and yet the cottage did not feel empty. It felt held. It felt like a place that had learned how to be peaceful. Near the door was a bench and a pair of slippers made of felt. Beside them, a towel folded neatly and a note written in careful, looping script on a piece of brown paper. The traveler picked up the note and read it. It said simply, "Dry your feet, warm your hands, rest as long as you like." The traveler's shoulders loosened, as if that permission had been something they didn't realize they needed. They sat on the bench and pulled off their rain boots. The boots made a soft sighing sound as they came free, releasing a hint of cool dampness. The traveler toweled their feet, slow and thorough, then slipped into the felt slippers. Warmth spread through toes and arches. A quiet comfort. The rain boots were placed neatly by the door, lined up as if they were visitors too, deserving of rest. They sat there dark and glossy, with a few droplets still clinging to them, catching candlelight. The traveler moved farther into the cottage, steps muted now in slippers. A table stood near the fire, set with a single cup and a small teapot. The traveler poured, and the tea was pale and fragrant, tasting like chamomile and something faintly sweet, like honey in the memory of a flower. They sat by the fire and sipped slowly. Outside, rain continued to fall. It tapped the roof in a steady, soothing pattern. It slid down the window panes in thin streams. In the warmth of the cottage, the sound was even softer, like fingers drumming gently on a blanket. The traveler's eyes grew heavy, but not in a sudden way. It was a gradual softness, as if the cottage were turning down the brightness of the world. On a shelf near the hearth, there were small objects, smooth stones, pine cones, tiny jars of dried lavender, a carved wooden animal that looked like a fox, curled up to sleep. The traveler's gaze drifted over them, noticing without effort, letting each detail be a small point of calm. Near the back of the cottage, a curtain of thick fabric hung across a doorway. The traveler stood, tea finished, and moved toward it. The curtain parted easily, revealing a narrow hall that led to a small room. The room contained a bed piled with quilts, each one patterned with leaves and raindrops and winding paths. A window looked out into the forest, but the glass was soft with fog, turning the outside into a watercolor of greens and grays. A candle burned low on a bedside table, its flame steady. There was also, near the foot of the bed, a tray with a brush and a cloth, and beside it, the traveler's rain boots had somehow appeared, placed there as neatly as before. The traveler blinked, mildly surprised but not unsettled. In a place like this, small mysteries felt natural. Perhaps the cottage simply took care of what was brought to it. Perhaps the boots, too, had their own small journey through the warm air and quiet magic. The traveler sat at the edge of the bed and looked at the rain boots. They were still damp from the path, and a faint smear of mud clung to the side of one sole. The traveler took the cloth and began to wipe them clean. It was a simple task, repetitive and soothing. Wipe the side, wipe the heel, wipe the edge of the sole. The cloth came away with dark streaks, and the boot's surface shone again. The traveler moved slowly, not rushing to finish. Each motion was like smoothing out wrinkles in the mind. As the boots were cleaned, a faint scent rose. Wet soil, crushed leaves, the mineral smell of stone. It carried the memory of the path, of puddles and moss and fern. The traveler felt a strange affection for those boots, as if they had been faithful companions through more than just one rainy walk. When the boots were finished, the traveler set them back on the tray and noticed something small tucked into one of them. A leaf folded neatly, its veins silvered as if traced with moonlight. The traveler lifted the leaf carefully. It was cool and flexible, not brittle. When they held it closer to the candle, the leaf seemed to shimmer. And for a moment the traveler saw the woodland path again. Not as it was outside, but as it might be in a dream. The path glowed faintly. The puddles reflected stars. The ferns leaned in as if listening. And along the path, tiny lights moved, guiding the way. The traveler's breath slowed. The leaf was not a warning, not a riddle. It was a reminder. The forest is here, and it will be here again. You can return whenever you like, even if only in your mind. The traveler placed the leaf on the bedside table beside the candle. Then they drew back the quilts and slid into bed. The mattress was soft but supportive, like a hand beneath the spine. The quilts were warm, layered like gentle clouds. The traveler exhaled and felt their body settle, sinking into rest. Outside the window, rain blurred the forest into calm shapes. Inside, the candle's flame made slow shadows dance on the walls. The traveler's eyes fluttered, and then, as if the story itself were ready to become even gentler, the traveler drifted into a half-dream where the woodland path returned. In that dream, the traveler was once again wearing the rain boots. The boots were warm now, perfectly fitted, as if made for wandering. The traveler stepped out of the cottage and onto the path, and though rain still fell, it felt lighter, more like a blessing than weather. The forest was quieter than before, not empty, but resting. The trees held their branches still. The stream moved slowly, as if it too had grown sleepy. Tap. A soft splash. Tap. The path was familiar yet softened by dream. Every puddle held a deeper reflection, showing not only branches above, but a faint glow, as if the sky had tucked a lantern under the water's surface. Every leaf seemed to breathe in time with the traveler's steps. As the traveler walked, they noticed small doorways at the bases of some trees. Not large doorways, tiny ones, no taller than a teacup, with little rounded tops and handles made from acorn caps. Some were painted the color of mushrooms. Some were carved with spirals and stars. The traveler passed them without stopping, feeling no need to knock. These were not invitations for waking curiosity. They were simply part of the forest's quiet neighborhood. A little farther on, a hare sat beside the path, ears tall, fur darkened by rain. It watched the traveler calmly, then blinked slowly, as if sharing a secret. "Everything is all right." The traveler nodded without thinking, and the hare hopped away, leaving only the faint impression of its presence. The path led to a bridge made of smooth stones set close together across the stream. The traveler walked over it, boots tapping gently on wet rock. Beneath the bridge, the stream sounded deeper, slower, like a lullaby played on a low instrument. On the other side, the forest opened into a glade where the rain fell in thin, shining threads. In the center of the glade stood a circle of birch trees, their pale trunks luminous in the gray light. Between the birches, tiny lights hovered, not bright enough to wake the mind, only bright enough to comfort it. The traveler stepped into the circle and felt the air change. It was warmer here, as if the birches held a pocket of sheltered calm. The ground was soft moss, springy under the boots. The traveler stood still. Above, the canopy formed a gentle dome, and the rain that reached it was filtered into the quietest dripping. One drop, another, like the slow ticking of a clock that measures rest rather than time. In the center of the circle, there was a shallow stone basin filled with water. The surface was smooth, even under the rain, as if it were protected by an invisible hand. The traveler leaned over it and saw not their own face, but a scene, a room, a bed, quilts, a candle burning low, a resting figure breathing evenly. The traveler understood, in the dreamy way one understands things in sleep, that the basin was showing the present moment of rest, a gentle mirror reminding the forest that those who wandered could also return to stillness. The traveler placed a hand over the basin, palm hovering above the water. The water warmed under the hand, not hot, simply comfortable. Then the traveler withdrew the hand and stepped back. The tiny lights drifted closer, forming a slow spiral around the traveler's boots. They moved like drifting petals, like thoughts becoming softer and softer until they were barely thoughts at all. The traveler's eyelids grew heavy even in the dream. The forest seemed to notice and respond. The rain quieted further. The wind stilled. The birches held their branches like arms around a sleeping child. Tap, splash, tap. Became softer, slower, until it was more like a heartbeat than footsteps. The traveler turned, leaving the birch circle, and followed the path again. Now it sloped gently downhill, and the traveler's body moved with minimal effort, as if gravity itself were guiding them toward deeper comfort. The path passed a patch of mushrooms, their caps shining like satin. It passed a log covered in moss, so thick it looked like a green pillow. It passed a cluster of stones arranged into a spiral, each stone wet and gleaming, each one quietly in its place. The traveler walked and walked, but it did not feel long. It felt like drifting. The boots were light. The rain was soft. The forest was a lullaby without words. Soon the traveler saw the cottage again, its windows glowing, its smoke curling lazily from the chimney. The porch chimes, tapped together with a tender sound, like a sigh. The traveler climbed the steps. The door opened easily. Warmth welcomed them, and the scent of herbs and wood smoke wrapped around them like a blanket. Inside, everything was just as it had been. Candles, fire, kettle, the quiet sense of being cared for. The traveler removed the rain boots and set them by the door. The slippers waited, the tea waited, the bed waited.
But the traveler did not need to do anything now, not even sip, not even tidy. The cottage seemed to whisper, "You've done enough. You've walked enough. You can rest."
The traveler stepped into the small bedroom and slid beneath the quilts once more. The candle burned lower. The rain's song continued outside, steady and kind, and the dream began to thin, the way mist thins when morning approaches. Except this was not morning. This was deeper night. This was the soft descent into sleep. The traveler's breathing slowed, in, out, in, out. The woodland path became a distant image, like a painting seen through closed eyelids. The rain boots became a gentle memory, their steady rhythm fading into the quiet. Tap, splash, tap, softer, slower, quieter. The cottage held its warmth. The forest held its hush. The rain held its patient falling. Everything became simpler. The traveler drifted, floating down into rest as if sinking into a calm lake. Thoughts dissolved before they could form. Worries softened into nothing. The body became heavy in the best way, safe and still. Outside, rain continued to fall, and each drop seemed to say the same thing: rest, rest, rest. The candle's flame became a small glow, then smaller, then only a memory of light. The quilts became a gentle weight. The bed became a quiet harbor, and the traveler, wrapped in warmth, let sleep arrive fully, slow and certain, like the forest welcoming night. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.